This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we found to work when dealing with teens and tough issues. Hey, this is Abbi and Cheree on Let's Talk Teens, episode 2, How Teen Emotions Are Formed.
I love it. I want to talk about this, don't you, Abbi?
I'm excited to talk about emotions. It's a big one.
It is such a big one. I think so much of the world is like, oh, how emotions are formed is how people make me feel. Or I go and I take a test and that test creates anxiety for me. Or I go and hang out with my friends and they don't include me. And now I feel lonely or left out because of what they did. And we make it so that our emotions are controlled or dictated or they happen from an outside source. They all are based on like our experiences. Now, you and I both know our experiences do have something to do with that, but it's way more than that, right?
I always think of the Inside Out movie, which is the new one just came out, right? And it's so fun. But I always think there's nobody in my head forcing me to do these things or forcing me to have these emotions. It's me. I'm the robot in charge, right? This brain, I'm the one that taught it how to do things. I'm the one that gets to control how I feel.
But let's just talk about that for a second. Let's talk about how our emotions created. I don't think most of the world knows this, at least the teenagers that I've coached and you've coached. Doesn't it surprise you how many of them don't understand that those emotions are created in our own head and body? Like they are self-created. We create our emotions. And that is all created by a thought, something we think. That neuron, the chemical makeup in our brain releases this chemical when we have a thought that this chemical is this vibration or this emotion that moves and vibrates through our whole body. We cannot have an emotion without first having a thought. It's their thoughts that create it. And I think that surprises most people.
I do think that it surprises people because when I think about strong emotions I felt in my life, they're connected to body responses like crying, shaking, feeling butterflies in my stomach, right? The heart racing. And so it's kind of hard to separate out that before the heart racing, pounding, or tears, there actually came a thought behind that. And so it's been really powerful for me in coaching when I'm explaining this to teenagers to say, some people look at the weather app tomorrow and it says it's going to be rainy and cloudy. And some people go, oh man, that sucks. It's going to be such a bad day. And other people look at that and go, oh my goodness, that's like my favorite cozy type of weather. Grab a book. And it's just amazing to start to point out that same circumstance, but different emotions based off of different thoughts. How do you teach it?
That's exactly it. Like love to talk about that. Like I remember when I was coaching during COVID and I'd get on with a teenager and they were doing online Zoom school and I would get on a coaching call through Zoom with one of these teenagers and they were like, COVID, best thing that's ever happened. I don't have to go to school, and they would be like, this is the best thing ever. And then the very next time I'd be like, my world is ending. I can't go to school. I have no social life. Zoom school is the worst. And, one of them felt excitement and the other was like total dread, right? And it was all how they thought about it and they looked at it and that story in their head. Now, we're humans. Of course, we're going to have a story in our head. Of course, we're going to have thoughts about circumstances. So it makes us human, right? But it is our story or our thoughts that create our emotions. If I think about how much I hate something, I'm going to feel dread. If I think about how great something is, I'm going to feel excited or happy. It's just what is created in our head. Another just fun analogy of how I teach it is I use death, which I know is not the best subject, but if you think about it, when someone dies, right? How do you feel? And they're like, oh, sad. And I'm like, really? Always? Like, let's think about that. If we lived in the time of Adolf Hitler, are you going to feel sad when you find out he died? No, I'm going to feel relief. Why? Because he killed a lot of innocent people. I am glad that's going to end. Yeah, of course you're going to feel relief. I'm guaranteed there were some people who felt sad when he died because they thought he was a great leader. And so, there's going to be emotions on either side of that, depending on what your thoughts are about the person who dies. And with that, you don't feel sad as soon as that person dies. Like that's a circumstance, someone dies, you feel sad instantly as soon as they die. You feel sad when you find out about it, when you have a thought about it.
That was just like a mind blown moment right there because it's true until you get the phone call or the oh my goodness, did you see this celebrity died, right? Or something like that. You're just living your happy life. Wow, Cheree, you just blew my mind on that. Yeah, it's I'm not sad the moment they die because I don't have a thought about it.
You don't know about it. You can't have an emotion about it. And that's where to think about it that way, like our emotions are 100% created by our thoughts and our thought patterns. And we're going to for sure have an episode in the future about our thought patterns and how to change that story in our head when it's not serving us and it's not creating the emotions we want. But we have to realize we are human, and part of being human is we're also going to have that 50-50 experience where we're going to feel all of the emotions because we're going to have thoughts all over the board about different things too. Like we're going to feel happy and we're going to feel sad. Nothing has gone wrong. I promise.
This is why I love an exercise that you call red light, green light with emotions. Talk us through that and why you try to avoid labels of good and bad and put it with red and green.
Yeah, I love it. So all emotions are necessary. There's a place for all of them. I would say, at exception of shame, and we might talk about that one in another episode as well. But all emotions are necessary. They make us human. We're not robots. We didn't sign up for the robot plan, so we're going to feel emotions. We label them negative or bad or positive and good, and then that sets in our programming of oh, these ones are okay to feel and these ones are not okay to feel. And something's gone terribly wrong if I feel this, and everything's perfect if I feel this. And so it's like, it's so necessary to feel all the emotions. There's a time and a place for all of them. So I like to call them red light emotions. Those are the ones that don't feel so good. I don't know about you, Abby, but I really find it inconvenient when I get to a red light when I'm driving in the car, especially if I'm in a hurry. I'm like, wow, why wasn't it green? I don't enjoy red lights most of the time. They stop me. They make me stop and think and pay attention and notice things. And that's what red light emotions do. They stop us. They give us their clue. Like, okay, what's going on in my world right now? Why do I feel this way? Instead of, okay, this is something that's gone wrong. No, I hit red lights. I feel these emotions. Why? Why am I feeling this? Versus the green light, which are those happy, excited, love, joy, all those emotions we love to feel. They feel so good in our body. And we just sell through those green lights. We love it. We take it for granted. We're just like, yes, green light, go, go, go. And we don't need to stop and pay attention. They're easy to feel, right? So red light emotions, they're not always fun, and yet they're necessary. It would be so weird if I felt happy when someone came and like ran into my car, like, or broke into my house, or, did something to harm me and I felt happy about it. Like, I want to feel upset about that. I want to feel mad, angry, sad, all the things. Like, that is valid.
So I would say that our big takeaway from this episode for parents out there is that one, it's important to help your children and your teenagers distinguish that their emotions are not in control of them, that it comes from a thought, right? That's our whole thing of where do these emotions come from? They come from our thoughts, and that we can change the way that we talk about them and validate the feelings and the emotions, but also start to look into like, what am I thinking about that led to today being a totally crummy day? Or what did I think about that led me to having a really awesome day, and helping your teen point that out. I've noticed teens are pretty good at figuring out why their day was awful. Oh, I had the math test, or Sarah didn't text me back, right? But when they're having a really great day, I think it's so important as a parent to just put in that moment of pause and say, oh my goodness, what were you thinking about today that like just made you so bubbly and happy? Or what happened that created some of these awesome emotions for you?
Yeah, emotions are clues. If we as parents can teach our teenagers and our kids that, like, an emotion is just a clue. It's just a clue to help us figure out what's going on so that I can address it, so I can, show up as my best self, or I can move through it and process it. Emotions are clues. Nothing has gone wrong.
I love that. And that goes perfect. Next time on the podcast, we are talking about how to teach your teens to be in charge of those emotions. And we are sharing some of our best coaching tips on what we do with teenagers to help them boss their brain about it. So join us on our next episode. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast to help you raise amazing teens. If you're looking for more help and tips on your teenager, visit Cheree on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching, or you can find her on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find Abbi on Instagram as Abbi Winslow, or on her website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please subscribe and rate our podcast and share with a fellow parent that you think would love this episode.